Dog Films presents Paid to Dream with Charles Dennis.
Hello, it's Charles Dennis. I'm back from hiatus. Ulrika and I had a wonderful time in Cabo. Thanks for asking. But I am so excited about this first podcast because it's the first time we've had a guest in Europe, in England. Here is Chris Humphreys, also known as C.C. Humphreys. Good morning, or good afternoon where you are.
Yes, good afternoon from Devon.
Wow. Devon, I'm in Devon. So tell me about the picture behind you before we get into other things.
The picture behind me is called Autumn Winds, and can I remember the name of the artist? No, but he's an Ontario artist, of course, your old stomping ground. And I won this, in fact. It was the only prize I got aside from the actual statuette for writing the novel Plague, which was in my religious fundamentalist serial killer story set during the Great Plague of London. And that won Best Crime Novel in Canada in 2015. And so I won the Arthur Ellis Award, and they gave me this, Autumn Winds, as a prize. It's very Ontario. It's kind of Group of Seven style.
Yes, it's very A.Y. Jackson or somebody like that.
That's right. So that's what that is.
And then you've got this lovely blanket from Peru.
Yes, I didn't set this up, but this just happens to be where I'm sitting. But yes, I bought this in the village of Ollantaytambo in the Urubamba Valley when I was wandering around Peru in 1988. And it's a little moth-eaten now, but I still love it. It's gorgeous patterns.
Thought maybe it was a book tour, but why would you go to Peru?
Well, no.
Now, let me just tell you, folks, this man, I pride myself in being the author of 15 novels. He's got 25.
True.
Do you ever sleep? I know you slept in this morning and almost missed the podcast.
Well, no, it's afternoon here, of course, so I was having my siesta. In fact, no, that wasn't it. Do I sleep? No, I sleep quite well, actually. In fact, I go out like a light, much to my partner's annoyance, who lies there awake for 2 hours. I can sleep easily, but I am fairly relentless in the writing, I have to say. I've just come up from the little cabin where I'm writing on this property, and I just came up with a really good idea for my new novel, actually. So I'm very pleased with myself this afternoon.
Well, I have my memoir coming out in October, and it's called Who the Hell is Charles Dennis? And it's a quote from Lauren Bacall to Jason Robards. 60 years ago, and I said, that's a great title. I'm going to sit on that. And now it's come to fruition.
Congratulations. That'll be very exciting, because I know you've moved. You've been a mover and a shaker all your life, Charles, and you've moved among from the Canadian acting aristocracy down. So
it's true. The cover of the book has me standing in front of the Northtown Theatre in Toronto, which is where it all began for me. And Toronto began for you as well. Despite that beautiful English accent, folks, this man and I were both born in Toronto.
Correct. That is right. Yeah.
So what brought your father to Toronto?
My father, Peter, came to Toronto in 1949 because opportunities were slim for an actor whose career had basically been hijacked by Adolf Hitler in 1939. And he was a fighter pilot, my dad, Battle of Britain pilot to begin with, shot down in North Africa, went into Transport Command, flew everywhere and everything, including Noel Coward at one point, but that's another story. So after the war, tried to pick up his acting career, but Britain was pretty savaged, as you know, by the war. So he decided to give Canada a go. I think it was a toss of a coin between Canada and Australia. Thank God he chose Canada. No offense to Australians listening. And so he went over a year ahead of my mother and my elder brother, who was 2 at the time he left, and then sent for them a year later, which was the sort of common thing for people trying out a new country to do then and now. And so he decided to give Canada a go and liked it, and worked a lot for CBC Radio in drama and as an announcer, which he'd also been at the BBC. And then But then in 1958, he inherited quite a lot of money from a great aunt Beatrice, and that sent him down to Hollywood. So when I was 2 years old, I went to LA for 4.5 years, and that was my sort of one of my formative experiences. Lived there till I was 6, and then we moved back to England.
Where did you live in L.A.?
Mandeville Canyon, Pacific Palisades.
Very nice. And was he pursuing his acting career there?
He did pursue his acting career. Yes, he really tried to sort of get that off the ground. It didn't really take off. He played guest lead on an episode of 77 Sunset Strip, but I think that was probably the ultimate for him in some ways there. He didn't quite emulate his father, because I know you wanted to talk about my grandfather, Cecil Humphreys.
Who I believe passed in 1949, didn't he?
48, I think he
Okay.
passed. Yeah, 48. He passed basically in harness on Broadway. And in fact, I just brought this back. I was just in Canada on a book tour, and this is one of the things I'd left behind. There is a caricature done by James Montgomery Flagg of Cecil Humphreys.
Now, I mean, the minute you lifted it, I said that must be a flag. And of course, we have people born after 1960 who probably have no idea who Flagg was, but he was the man.
He was the man. He was Sardi's restaurant. He did all the caricatures before Hirschfield did, and he and my granddad were great mates, because my granddad, as you'll probably explain, was quite a man both of the theatre and the film industry, and but he was mainly a Broadway baby and lived there for the English actor, but lived there the last 12 years of his life.
Now, Cecil Humphreys, for those of you who are film buffs, and we have quite a few because that's why people like Paid to Dream, you will know him from Wuthering Heights, where he was Edgar Linton's father. And for me, the one, because it's one of my favorite movies, The Razor's Edge, he was the holy man who Tyrone Power made the pilgrimage to visit. Of course, he spoke more beautifully than any Indian, so one has to assume perhaps he was an Englishman who became a holy man.
Well, indeed.
Because there's no way he was Indian.
No, I don't think he ever attempted to be Indian in that, actually. He was just the holy man. And yes, and it's a wonderful film still. It really holds up. And one of the best things Ty Power ever did, I think. So,
absolutely. And then I think his last film is a favorite of mine, the Huxley adaptation, A Woman's Not Revenge, whatever it is. It's a wonderful movie with Charles Boyer and Jessica Tandy in one of her few starring roles before she reappeared years later as an old lady.
Excellent.
Woman, I think the original story might be called A Woman Scorned, but it's a wonderful film. Have you seen it?
Yes, I have seen it. I think Granddad's only in one scene or something, isn't he?
Yeah.
But
that was I think just the year it passed. But his Broadway, I mean, he was George Washington in The Patriots. It was a huge success for him. And he was also in this 2-night fiasco called A Passenger to Bali, which was directed by John Huston and co-starred your grandfather and Walter Huston.
What? Wait, is that a film or a play?
Play, 2 nights only. Boom. What was wrong with this show?
Oh, well, I've never even heard of that, so I must look it up because I love
1940.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Now, you have just returned from... Okay. When you and I met through our dear friend Neil Dixon, and we'll talk about AD in a moment, you were living in British Columbia in Saltern Island.
Salt Spring Island.
Yes. Salt Spring Island.
Yeah.
And I discovered you weren't there anymore. When did you leave?
Well, we left. I left. Kat joined me later, my partner. I left about 2.5 years ago, though I was back and forth quite a bit. But I really set my sights on England at the beginning of 24. I'd lived on Salt Spring 13 years, loved it for lots of reasons. It's British Columbia, it's an island, it's beautiful. But it's kind of quiet. And even though I did lots of local theatre and worked happily with the local community, I had other ambitions back in England, both theatrically and also as a writer. A lot of my career, career has been both Canadian and English, but I felt I needed to sort of lean back into the British side. My agent was here, that sort of thing. So I decided to give it a go, and then I really stumbled upon this amazing town in the west of England called Totnes, and happily ensconced myself then. So I've been.
Show us the view, please.
Oh well, all right, if you insist. Yes, this is what I look at of a morning. It's going to be very bright out there. That's my view. That's the Devon hills over there. This is our
Rolling hills.
and I'm in this most glorious property. If we had time, I'd take you down. I was just sitting down in the wildflower meadow, which looks like something that Monet would have painted. It's absolutely gorgeous. So,
Well, we can come back for a second visit, and we can try the tour, which is really exciting.
I could have you on my phone then, and I could wander around with you. You see, that would be easier. So,
And my friend Julian Fellows, I think, is your neighbor. So
oh, is he indeed? Oh, I didn't know that.
all the great writers reside.
Ah, well.
So tell me about the tour. How did it go?
Well,
Oh, well, the tour. Let me just tell people. Yes, I introduced Chris Humphreys, but he publishes under the name C.C. Humphreys.
yes,
C.C. And the new book is The Double Life of Eve Sinclair.
that's right. That's
Want
right.
to tell us a little something about it?
Sure. Yeah. The Double Life of Eve Sinclair is the second of my World War II spy romance novels. The first one was called Someday I'll Find You, came out a couple of years ago. That one was loosely based on my parents because my father, as I told you before, was a fighter pilot, and my mother was a spy. So eventually I had to kind of write that story, though it's not their story. It's not a bio. It's a fiction about two people similar to them, a fighter pilot and a spy. So it did rather well, particularly well in Canada. It was published really only in Canada at the time. But my Canadian publishers, Doubleday, who were part of Penguin Random House, they really liked it and liked the success of it. So they asked me for something that wasn't a sequel, but was in the same sort of realm, World War II spy fiction with Canadian content. So I came up with this idea for a Montreal sort of blue blood Westmount girl who is educated expensively in Europe to marry well, which she does, and she marries a budding diplomat called Richard Spence, and off they go to Sweden in 1939. But the marriage has issues, shall we say, and things go wrong. And Eve finds herself caught up in a world of secrecy and betrayal in Stockholm initially, and eventually she finds a core of steel within herself, and enlists with the British SOE and becomes a spy and a saboteur. So it's that story, the double life of Eve Sinclair, being both the life she had to live as a spy and actually as a person as well. So that has just come out in Canada. So I was doing a tour back, really the places I used to live. I began it in Toronto, well, Burlington actually, but then Toronto. Did events in both those places, then flew west, did an event in Vancouver where I lived, and then on to Salt Spring Island where I did an event as well. So yeah, was touring that book there, which was very exciting. It was lovely being back because I do love Canada and I love being back and seeing a ton of friends I have in all those places. So that was great, and the book went straight into the top 10 Globe and Mail bestseller list.
Well, I read the first chapter last night, and I mean, man, it's like boom, you're like a racehorse, boom. It's there. You're so totally caught into it,
Yeah.
and I can't wait to finish it. What was your first novel?
My first novel was called The French Executioner, and it was about the man who killed Anne Boleyn, the French swordsman brought over to kill Anne Boleyn, and what happened next. That was my launch pad. It's It's such a fun novel, that one. It's absolutely crazy. It's a mad book, but became a sort of cult hit, which was interesting. And it obviously launched my career. The British publisher who bought it once I'd written it wanted two books, so I got a two-book deal straight away, and thereafter a series of contracts, as you say, up to including number 25 now. So,
So what year was that?
French Executioner was published in the year 2000.
I know when I wrote my first book, Stone Cold Soldier, I was living in England, and it was sort of necessity. I wasn't getting work as an actor. My plays, one was optioned, but so I just sat down and wrote my first book. What, after years of being an actor, what caused you to write the book?
Well, I always known really that I wanted to write. I mean, I loved acting. I still love acting. I still don the odd costume now and again. Funnily enough, I was at an event in London 2 weeks ago for my latest crime novel, which is called One London Day.
I'm going to kill this guy. I'm going to kill him. Go on.
What? Which is
I mean, the other one. Book.
Yeah.
Do you use both hands? I mean, what do you do?
Well, indeed. And that novel I wrote is Chris Humphreys as well. I have different names, different novels. And I was on a panel of spies, which was terribly thrilling because it's a spy thriller, modern spy thriller. And well, only one guy was an actual spy, but you weren't allowed to take photographs of this panel. It was very interesting. But the person who introduced me got to the end of the line where I was sitting and said, "And Chris Humphreys is a former actor." And I went, "Oh, excuse me a moment here. I'm not a former actor. I am an
I'm
actor."
available.
That's exactly what I said to the audience. I am available. What was I talking about? The
men we couldn't, the men with the black hoods on their heads, the real spies.
Yeah. So I know. So I'm still an actor, but I decided back then, as you know, Charles, as an actor, you have to wait for permission to act. You have to wait for someone to give you permission to be creative. And I'd always had all these ideas, my own stories buzzing around my head, but I didn't understand for the longest time that writing is a process. I thought it had to be brilliant straight away. And since mine wasn't brilliant straight away, I obviously wasn't a writer. What I learned, of course, fairly soon was that you start out with an idea and then you develop it, then you work it, you rework it, you rewrite it, and eventually you get to a point where you can release it into the world. So what I did as a writer, I was living in Vancouver, early 90s. Hadn't intended on staying in Vancouver at all. I'd gone out for a summer, but I just kept getting acting work, so I just stayed. And I saw a 24-hour playwriting competition. And you had to go into a room on a Friday night with 2 pages of notes and write a play. And I thought, that way I'll finish something, because finishing things was the problem, because I didn't understand the process part of it. So I went into this room with a 2-page synopsis for a story which was ripped from my own headlines, really. It was a tragic love story that had happened to me a few years before, where it had ended really badly, but really dramatically. And so I wrote this play. I called it A Cage Without Bars. And I thought, that's it. I'd finished a play. I left the room. That was all my ambition fulfilled. But then it won the competition. It got a production the following year, and they gave me $500. So I was like, woohoo, I'm a professional writer. So I then wrote a second play, which I was commissioned to write, for a theatre in Calgary, actually, a ghost comedy. And but all this time, I really wanted to write historical fiction. And I had the idea for The French Executioner, the man who killed Anne Boleyn, for some time. And but years I went, oh, if ever I write that novel, which I probably won't because it's a novel, it's so big, it's almost impossible. If I do, though, I'll put into it everything I love. And so I'd get these books from shelves, from secondhand bookstores. I'd pull down a book and go, oh yeah, Battle at Sea Between Slave Galleys. That'll be in the book I'll never write. And so by the time I actually sat down 6 years later, living back in England, I had the whole story in my head and all this research already done. And I finally sat down one night in a cottage in Shropshire I used to go to. I was living back in England then, and I just started writing it. And 6 months later, I had the first draft, and then I revised it, and I thought, I think it's all right. And I went after an agent. I didn't exactly stalk her. There was an element of stalking about going after this agent. But anyway, I scored this agent, and she had the book sold within 2 months on a 2-book deal to Orion, who's a top London publisher. So that was it.
Is this
Charles,
woman
you've frozen.
still an...
You're back. You're back.
We're back. Is this woman still an agent?
Alas, no, she retired many years ago. So, yeah. But that was it. So that launched my writing career. And now, as you say, 24 novels later.
And trilogy after trilogy. That's what's really amazing. But The Rivals. Had you appeared in The Rivals?
I had, yes. I mean, that was.
And what did you play?
I played Jack Absolute.
Of course.
Of course. And then when my publishers, I'd written the first 2 novels for them in London, and they took me out for lunch. I just ran into the woman who commissioned me, actually, Jane Wood, the other day at that crime festival, and I hadn't seen her for years. And I said, do you remember that lunch? Because I'd written the first 2 novels for them, French Executioner and Blood Ties, its sequel. And then they took me out for one of those lovely lunches, but they're always after something, publishers. And they said, so, Chris, what do you want to write next? And I said, and I'd had this idea about The Rivals, for many of your watchers will no doubt know that The Rivals is a play by Sheridan, 18th century comedy, and I'd played the dashing rogue Captain Jack Absolute in it, and it was one of the few roles in my life I feel I completely nailed, maybe one of a handful. And I loved being Jack. And then, so 20 years later, I'm a novelist, and a publisher says, what are you going to write next? I said to them, I'd like to write about Jack Absolute. And they said, oh, who's he? And I said, he's the 007 of the 1770s. And they basically said, could you sign this napkin here, please? Because, and
good for you.
Yeah, and that was it. So I wrote Jack, and then I did a prequel, The Blooding of Jack Absolute. And then I did the sequel to the prequel, which was called Absolute Honor. And then the way of publishing, and this is another too long story to go into, but my career was hijacked by my most successful novel, but a very different subject, Vlad, the Last Confession, which is the true history of Dracula. So I lost Jack. I planned on writing Jack forever. But the good news is I've written another Jack, which
Jack's back.
Jack's back. And it's called, appropriately enough, The Resurrection of Jack Absolute, and it'll be out next January.
My bookshelves are expanding, but I get you on Kindle now because I haven't got space.
Fair enough. Any way you want to read it, carved into a shark fin, you can. I'm happy if anyone reads it.
As a kid, my favorite TV show was Maverick with James Garner, and I think I might have mentioned this to you before. There was one episode called The Rivals, and it was the credit was Marion Hargrove, based on a play by W.R. Sheridan, and they redid in 1 hour. They did The Rivals out west.
Good Lord!
And Roger Moore was the guest star, and it's the only Maverick episode that has Roger Moore, Jack Kelly, and James Garner. And they liked Roger Moore so much that they brought him back as a cousin. He was Beau Maverick.
Wow, fun. Well, it's very
You probably track it down.
Because I mentioned my father playing a guest lead in 77 Sunset
Yeah.
Strip. The other guest actor was Roger Moore.
Is that available? We'll have to look on YouTube. No, nothing vanishes anymore. It's all on YouTube.
That is exactly right. Yes, yes.
What about what was the other trilogy I wanted to? Oh yeah, the Immortals Blood trilogy. Tell us a little something about that.
Yeah, that's interesting. The Immortals Blood trilogy. So, the writing novels, when you're sort of in the flow of it, and you're writing for different publishers, they'll come at you with their different agendas, or your agent will. And my agent at the time, a great guy called Mike Bryan, who'd been the managing director of Penguin Canada at one stage. So he said to me, "Oh, Chris, you write such terrific sort of epic stuff. High epic fantasy is the game in town right now. This is back in 2018. He said, "Do you have any ideas?" And I went, "Well, no, but I'll come up. If you think that's the way we should go." So I came up with this idea of a world which is ruled by sort of the elites. The 1% are immortals, and no one knows how you become an immortal. It's something in the blood. You don't find out until you die for the first time, and then you don't. And there were three different worlds within this world. One was a kind of Norse world, one was a kind of Byzantium world, and one was a kind of Inca Aztec world. And they didn't know about each other, but they were destined to within the course of these three books. So I came up with that idea, and my agent had it sold to Gollancz in Britain, which is one of the top fantasy sci-fi publishers. So I wrote that trilogy. 2018 to 21, I tend to write a book a year. Alas, the series didn't do very well. I mean, you just never know with a book, and you can spend a lot of time on something and then it'll essentially disappear without trace. However, the good thing about any book is that it's always going to be there, and someone might discover it further down the road. In fact, and this is a slightly odd wrinkle, but a very happy one in my life, I'm very big in Serbia. They love me in Serbia. And in fact, on this book tour I was just on, I began in Serbia because I was being presented with a fantasy writing award called the.
Now, is this translated into Serbian, or do they
translated into Serbian? Yeah. So I've had 5 books so far translated into Serbian, and I think they might do the Immortals Blood trilogy next. They've just translated another of my fantasy novels, which was a young adult novel called The Hunt of the Unicorn, which was commissioned and published by Knopf in New York about 15 years ago. Another one of I love all my children, but that's one of my favorite books. So that's nice. So maybe Immortals Blood next, who knows?
And what about the Tapestry trilogy?
Well, that is actually, I combined all the Hunt books into one trilogy. So the Tapestry trilogy begins with The Hunt of the Unicorn, continues with The Hunt of the Dragon, and concludes with The Hunt of the Shapeshifters. So I wrote that trilogy. I basically, Hunt of the Unicorn, Hunt of the Dragon were published by Penguin Random House, and then I added Hunt of the Shapeshifters to complete the trilogy.
And isn't that ring on your finger something to do with?
It is. It's the. I don't know if you can see this
Go
here.
ahead.
There you go.
Yeah.
Got some light on it, maybe. I don't know if you can see it, but that is a rampant unicorn on my ring. It's my father's ring, in fact, and my grandfather Cecil would have had the same ring.
What is the story behind that?
The family crest. The story behind it is that Cecil's father, Henry James Thomas Rock Humphreys, was basically a guy who dragged himself up by his bootstraps from being a stable lad to running the biggest stables in Cheltenham, England. And by the late 19th century, he was a very wealthy fella, which is pretty good for a stable boy turned horse auctioneer turned stable owner in a horse town, Cheltenham being the number one English horse town, where they have the races. And so he decided he was a gentleman, much like Shakespeare's dad, decided he was a gentleman, needed a coat of arms. So Henry chose the rampant unicorn, and every Humphreys son, and in fact the daughters have claimed it now as well, because it used to be just the sons. Every Humphreys son gets the ring when he comes of age. So my son, Reith Humphreys, who is now 22, when he turned 18, I had to then get him the Humphreys ring.
Amazing. You are a fascinating man. What about the acting? Have you done anything lately?
Well, funny thing was, when I came back to England, I decided not to embark on the mad world of self-taping and all that stuff. So I didn't really pursue an agent or anything like that. So, and also because I'm just really busy with the writing, I got involved with the local theatre community. I produced a show for the Fringe Festival last year, which they have here in Totnes. Wrote and produced and directed and sort of narrated a play, which we did in a building that's been here since 1575. Did it promenade style around the building, which was wonderful. And then I joined a local company, Moonstone, which does murder mysteries. So I don't know if you're aware of those, but you basically go in and enact a mystery which the audience has to solve, and it's essentially 2 hours of improv. So I that's how I get my acting jollies at the moment. I'm thinking of throwing my hat more fully back into the acting ring in England. The limited amount of roles available for a gentleman of my age, but I might do it because it's a skill I have and I kind of miss it.
Write a play for yourself, for heaven's sake.
Well, that I could also do. That I could also do.
Absolutely.
But for now, I'm very happy doing the odd bit of the murder mysteries and the odd bit of acting in fringe shows and things like that. So I'm very happy with it all.
Well, the magic number has come up. As I told you, it flies by. Everybody out there, C.C. Humphreys, a.k.a. Chris Humphreys. This has been Paid to Dream. Please click like, please subscribe, and we are going to have this man back again in the future. Thank you so much, Chris.
Take care. Bye-bye.